Thank you very much. Yeah, cool. So this is the governance and operations manual. So there's been a draft. I should put a link in. There's been a draft created through the HL7 Australia board. You get the info. So basically this is the Australianized version of uh, there is an international GOM, which is the one that we are generally using as guidance on how we operate committees and other things with HL7 Australia, and the HL7 Australia GOM is it's the Australian version of that. I'm just trying to. I forgot to put the link in, so that is not helping. Let me find it.
I have got it up.
You have got it?
Share.
Amazing.
Tab instead. There we go.
Yeah, big thanks so much for that, Jen. So basically there is an Australianized version of that GOM. It's out for review. So basically looking for feedback. There are Australianized bits of content. There's a few notable additions and differences to how we're doing things at the moment, like the proposal to introduce a technical steering committee, which is kind of a governance body that sits between the committees and the board. So there's a bit of explanation there. It's got all the things around running elections and managing committees, committee formation processes, and so forth. So it has incorporated some most of, I think, what we've been operating to so far with the specific processes we've been running. There's a bit more information about accelerators in there, and just some mention on how accelerators get formed, mainly. And yeah, so it is a detailed document, that it's attempting to kind of cover off the governance and operation part of running committees. And so it's out for review. So it's expected this will go through a feedback process. There'll be some consideration of that, and there'll be further versions of this. So really, this is the first call out to membership to have a look and see if there are concerns or differences or additions that should be there, and that will get worked through. I don't think it's expected necessarily that this will be completed this year, but certainly, like, we're looking for broad input and obviously pointing at any problems that may be foreseen with this content. So yeah, whilst a long document, it does pretty much follow the international GOM mostly, but I do think it's worth reading through the detail because there's a few differences in there that need to be considered. I don't know if there's much more to add to that.
What are the main differences, Brett, would you say?
I think there's in different way, just in different ways. So from international, there's more mention of FHIR accelerators and types of FHIR accelerator, and that's probably an area that probably does need a good review. And other than that, it does, I think, the difference to the way that we're operating now. So we have there's some parts of this that were rewritten and adopted by the FHIR Work Group, which took away the TSC as an entity, which is the Technical Steering Committee. So there's an idea here to introduce a Technical Steering Committee. which would kind of take on more of the governance aspects of some of the things the FHIR Work Group has been doing, all the HSO Australia board has been doing. So that's worth going through and seeing what that means. Yeah, as well. Ruben's the guy that wrote it. So Ruben.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, I just wanted to respond to Jane's question. Just some of the key differences between this GOM and the international one. I think the biggest one is the international GOM actually has content regarding normative ballots. So that's not something we've gotten to just yet in HL7 Australia. They also talk about management groups as a kind of committee, which we don't have in HL7 Australia either. We're just not big enough to warrant that, and we don't actually manage primary specifications like V2, CDA, and FHIR. So it's arguable we don't really need that either. The other key difference is we've got a couple of other governance instruments like the HL7 Australia Constitution and our bylaws, which this GOM needs to sort of align and work in the context of. They've got some similar things, but a lot of the things we have in our constitution and bylaws they actually have in their GOM as well. So that's sort of slightly more in terms of where things sit as a difference. But I think operationally, I think they both try to establish clear and well-defined governance processes for the standards development process. And that's really the ambition we have for this as well. Thanks, Brett.
Oh, amazing. Thanks.
Thanks, Ruben. Okay. And when is it? When did we want feedback by? There you go, 12th of May.
The deadline for feedback, 12th of May.
Yep.
So Ruben, the plan after we get feedback is to obviously review and
Yeah,
turn that
so
around for another version, yeah?
yeah, it's I guess we'll follow a similar process as we did with the Australian Fire Management Framework, where we'll note all the feedback, we'll respond to it individually and publicly, and if if the feedback is such that another review is required, we'll do that. Otherwise, we'll try to get a version of this which can be operationalized, done as soon as possible. And then it falls to the board to decide when the most appropriate time to actually implement and operationalize the Australian Governance Operations Manual. That is no small feat. A lot of the things that's specified in here call for establishment of processes, in particular around creation of an Australian Technical Steering Committee, finding members for that, running elections for that. The board member who has the role of Work Group Liaison Officer, currently held by Brett, has a significant number of additional responsibilities, which will take some time to sort of bed in along with everything else. So the board will not take that decision lightly, but I know that there is a very strong desire amongst the board to try and have this in place as soon as possible, just in the spirit of establishing a higher level of organizational maturity of HL7 Australia as an affiliate. So I think that's more or less the way we're approaching this, but happy to take questions.
Any questions for Ruben now or? Nope. Okay.
I'm happy to be contacted outside of these meetings as well. If anyone has any questions on this review or the content of the draft AUGOM, I'm happy to respond.
Thanks, Ruben. Okay. Okay. All right. Back to our minutes then. We now have a list of actions related to our AE Base R6. First one might actually be you too, Ruben. Implementation of medication strength extension.
I'm sorry, I don't have an update on this just yet.
Nope.
I've just gotten back from leave, but I'll add this to the top of my list for the next meeting, if that's okay.
Yep. Okay. No worries. Okay, so
Marika's away as well this week, so she sent an apology through. So
yeah.
Okay.
no action. Yeah.
All right. We have Michael. Michael, do you have a?
Yep, I'm online. So if I can share my screen.
Sure.
I sent you a request.
I haven't got it because I'm not logged in as. Is anyone logged in as?
Oh, okay, that's fine. It looks like it's working for me now.
Okay. I can't see it though.
Oh, hold on. Share.
Here it goes. Yeah.
Yep.
All right. Okay, so a while back, so back in February, there was a review of what sort of coverage types are in use and who's planning to use it. And I was asked, to go and review and come back with some options for coverage type. So I went and wrote a bit of a review here. I'm just going to try and move this over. Get rid of that. Okay. So what's coverage type? So it's essentially a category of medical insurance of some sort, or coverage for a particular activity, I guess, or action. So there's a preferred binding, which is currently an AU base, and it's using the international codes plus self-pay codes, and we've added a new one, PayConc, in that. But when we did look at that review on Zula, I came across the fact that we're missing one for public hospital-funded work, which would come under this very general public pol type code. It's got this definition, so it's funded by a public health system such as provincial and national health plans. So they've actually lumped provincial, which could be our state, in with a national, which could be something like Medicare. So it's a grouper, and I think it's probably too coarse to use in our coverage type value set. So what so from the review, these are the types of things that we wanted in our value set. There was other comments around NDIS and HCP, and I think that was a good idea as well to have those in. So I came up with two options. I think I might have presented this at the last meeting, if that's correct. I'm not sure. But one was to add two generic codes as descendants of public pol into THO's Act code. And then, so this was after talking to some of the terminology people internationally. The disadvantage is that it's still ambiguous. It doesn't give Australia the ability to sort of refine what those billing codes mean. And they're not willing to take on jurisdictional codes anyway, even though there appears to be jurisdictional codes in that set. So I think what we do need is a new code system and value set. I think if you've ever looked at V3 Act code, it's really a potluck type code system. There's lots of things, lots of different activities in there. It's a bit of a mess to try and navigate through. And I think we could refine it a lot better in Australia, particularly as there's a lot of jurisdictional type codes, not just Medicare and public hospital billing, but as I said before, things like, NDIS, HCP. It's not to throw out some of these other ones. I think it's good to reuse codes, particularly from international. But sort of what I've come up with is something like this. So would essentially be those two codes, Pub Hosp and Medicare, NDIS, HCP, from a new code system. And then we would reuse some of the ACT codes from international I wouldn't change any of those. Workers' comp, they all seem pretty self-evident. And then we could just include pay and pay comp from coverage self-pay into something like that. And then we can add any Australian coverage types that we require into this code system, because it'd just be all members of the Australian code system. So any questions? Danielle?
I think I have comment. I think the working through a set of meaningful Australian codes that would support kind of like billing and financials makes sense. I'm a bit iffy on constraining the value set in AU base, which should be, the widest possible set, instead of just extending it.
Mm-hmm.
I think those are my two comments.
I think I kind of agree with that, but I just think there's too many codes in V3 Act code for that to make sense for anybody. Like, I think we could go as wide as possible in Australia, just like ask around and.
But are you thinking particular use cases rather than all possible use cases for coverage? I mean, I think we need to be careful not to be too constrained into, I'm going to put a preferred set for this particular set of circumstances. I guess that's probably what worries me about restricting it.
Yeah.
It's going to suit that case really well, but base is, should be the widest possible meaningful set.
Over that, just lost power to my headphones.
No worries.
Right?
Yeah. That's. I was coming out from the same direction as Danielle, but I'm thinking too. What this actually is really useful because it does let us define relevant Australian things, because the international value set is broad and pretty confusing to use. Yeah, so I don't know. I kind of think if it's only preferred binding, I kind of think you don't have a problem because you're going to go and use the codes that you're going to use.
Yeah, I
but
don't
it
think
does
we
kind
can
of
make
get rid
it.
of the noise. Yeah.
I don't think we can make it more constrained at AU base level than preferred, and that's the level it is in international. If we're into something like you're requesting, then we could say maybe extensible or something like that. But yeah.
Yeah, we just need to keep in mind that base is use case agnostic.
Yeah.
I think the thing is, like, there is a lot of material in that value set that is very US centric and very hard to interpret. So I can see the value in reducing the.
If you look at, to me, I look at this profile specific implementation guidance and think, why do you need that? Because that should be actually in your value set. It shouldn't necessarily be there. Like, you shouldn't be telling people in plain English what codes to use for what purpose in implementation. To me, that doesn't make sense. You should just have the value set, and that's where you look. And I know why that's there. It's because V3 Act code is so confusing to use, and it's yeah. So there's some food for thought there. Do we want to sort of go away and think about that and then come back and maybe a proposal at some point? Or did Ruben have anything?
Nope.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll add it to the agenda for next meeting, and if people can have a think about it. And
We
So
might
what-
have a chat about it, Brett and Danielle in our meeting this afternoon.
Although I
Yeah,
guess
when
I'll
we do
say,
next.
coming from core and patient summary, I have no project requirements I can provide here. So there's nothing I'm going to be able to really comment on. So I can't drive this forwards. This is going to come from, I guess,
requesting.
other segments on those improvements.
Yeah, I think it's too like the difficulty, like, because I think for general use, this is like this list that we've got in guidance is the stuff that people mostly care about. But however, I'm not sure in the insurance business what they care about. Because yeah, we're not really talking about that at that level. So it's but in some ways, I think having a value set that reflects common usage and that's the preferred set that we understand will be used is useful. So I kind of think it would be a good addition.
I reckon just put up a PR, post a note on Zulip, say when we're going to talk about it in an agenda, and we can go through it then. Like if people, want to comment on it, they can come to that meeting. That might be the best way to proceed.
I think it might be useful. Yeah, I agree with that, Danielle. But I think it might also be useful for me just to go through the current preferred value set for coverage and just like basically tick and cross stuff that is actually useful, or maybe in my opinion, but yeah, well, there's obvious stuff that isn't useful because it's American centric or whatever, and so we can actually make that list a little bit fuller in the value set. But yeah, agree. A PR would be useful to throw things at.
Yeah, I think the thing is that it'll need managing over time because I imagine like this is a nice general set. I imagine there are more specific things that are probably relevant that we don't know about. And so and I think in AE base, I mean, we're not stopping anyone doing anything by going preferred binding.
Is there going to be an e-requesting specific set? Because
there will be. Yeah, there will be because they're going to restrict. They're going to have a restrict set for e-requesting.
So that'll be different to the base set. Yep.
Yeah, it'll be different. It won't cover necessarily. Oh, well, I don't know. Maybe not be different.
That's an interesting question too. It may be the base set.
Constraint on the base. The problem at the moment is the foundation for this is completely out of sync with Australian kind of needs. So we end up having to try to reuse the elements that are already there, but they actually don't make any sense in the Australian context. So it'd be better to have a interpretation that's consistent, because for some of them, e-requesting won't be the only use of it. I don't think there would be anything that would be specific to only e-requesting. Like we do this with referrals as well.
Yeah, so I think there's multiple things, right? Because I think adding the codes that you want as specific concepts is one thing, and I think which means introducing a new code system, right? And we've got one, have we? No, we
don't.
No. So yeah, so that's one thing, I guess, that I think most people would go, yeah, if we think this is important, we would do that. And then whether we restrict it.
I had a further question, and it relates to the way V3 the Act code system work. It's hierarchical. So at level 3, you've got a certain level, and then you've got obviously subtypes of level 3 and all that sort of stuff. And whether our coverage system would need to be hierarchical, or whether it's safe enough to just have 5 or 6 codes that we use all the time that are just in a flat hierarchy.
Depends on how you
Well,
design it. Are
yeah.
are we identifying sibling codes, or are we identifying hierarchical codes?
Yeah, I'm just wondering
Yeah.
whether if there's any use to making it hierarchical. And
Yeah, I mean, we've already
the
got that complication, don't we? We've got that complication already that you can't really place those codes under the term that you want
yeah,
because it's in
that's
another
right.
code system. Yeah. So I think I'm not sure.
Yeah,
Maybe
I
the most
think flat
effective.
because, but then that
Yeah.
means we're not extending v3 Act code, so it's a new code system. It's not a extension of a code system, if you know what I mean.
I get what you're saying, that because the concepts you're thinking of proposing for the Australian concepts would probably be children of, like if they were incorporated in the international one, which has turned us down, they would be children of them. But because they've turned it down, we have to create our own. And since that means they'll end up being siblings, we can't call it an extension of the international code system. That's
Correct.
what?
That's
Okay.
where I was coming from. Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of slightly technical and nuanced, but it's actually meaningful for when you go to design this thing. But yeah.
Look, personally, I think calling this set of concepts something other than ACT codes is probably a brilliant idea, because who knew that ACT codes is all about, coverage and insurance?
No, I still don't.
Oh yeah. No, you're in the ancient history of V3 there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. I
don't know. Yeah, maybe we could talk about it because I think we could probably need to split it into separate proposals because that would be I think adding the codes is one thing, introducing those to the binding, and then having a restricted binding are two different questions, and restricted value set are different questions. So it'd be good to. I think these codes are important. So the question is.
Cool. So that's I'm not sure if I've got a Jira on that, but possibly I have. But so two Jiras essentially. One is okay. Here's the code system. We want to add, these 4 codes to a code system to include the coverage type, and then there's the value set question around.
Yeah, because we would have. We would have to create a new value set as well, right, to incorporate those codes and a new code system to have define the codes. Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah,
cool. Okay.
Yeah, cool.
Thank you.
That's good.
I'll stop sharing. Stop share there.
Thanks, Michael. Although you do have your name against a couple of others, let me reshare. Okay, so the next one, Marika's away, so that's not, will need to be postponed. Danielle?
Yep. I'll comment on this. So I took an action out of a meeting, I think at beginning of March, to email the AUCDI editors, because we were asking the question around ethnicity, because we have in AU base a draft AFMM0 ethnicity extension. And there were a number of reasons that we identified that the FHIR Work Group can't progress this without a meaningful terminology, and that wasn't with us to progress. That might be within the agency, or that might be somewhere else. And there was a action on me to contact the editors of AUCDI and see where ethnicity was in their backlog, and if that was even in the backlog and what the status was. So I fired off an email, and they've gotten back to me, and they have confirmed that yes, ethnicity is on the backlog for AUCDI. It's not yet prioritized for inclusion. It's been raised in several discussions, but most of the specific discussion that's been had is the part around Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander status, which they recognise may or may not be considered part of the concept of ethnicity. And that this is not expected to be coming into the R3 of AUCDI. So it's still on their backlog and there are no short-term plans to address it. And that's my report back to the group.
Stephen, do you have a comment on that? If so, we can't hear you. Stephen, did you want to pop in the chat? Are you trying to speak or?
Can you hear me now?
We can. Thank you.
Okay, cool. Sorry, I am using a new headset, so the setting seems to be a bit difficult to manage. So what I was trying to say is that if you look at US CDI and also US core as an example, there is no hard dependency of one on the other. They keep on leapfrogging sort of each other in terms of their versioning. Why can't we follow similar examples? We can consider creating some value sets for or value domains for considerations, trial implementation, and then take it from there.
If that's something that you're happy to take on, Stephen, I think we would be delighted to consider a proposal.
Okay. I will think about it and have discussions with my colleagues at the agency, and then we can see what can be done.
Yeah, I mean, there was, I think, quite a long discussion on why and where, and we've got some comments from you in that discussion on why it's sitting at draft 0, which might inform what you put forward. But yeah, I mean, if you've got if something comes out from the agency on a proposal, I think, of course, we would consider that.
Okay. Let me have some internal discussions and then see whether or not there is extra bandwidth to do something about it.
Can we record that as an action, please? Thank you.
Okay, fair enough.
Okay. Thank you, Stephen. Okay, next we have Michael.
Yeah, so this one was about adding sex parameter for clinical use to AU base. So I created the Jira, and I think there was just an action on Ruben to talk to it. So there's a couple of questions around what its importance is. There's another one, how hard it is to do, who's going to lead the discussion, and the draft content facilitation and PRs and authors. I'm not sure if you've had a chance to look at this, Ruben.
I've thought about it, but I don't think I was here for the meeting where this was actually discussed, and I'm actually keen to understand a little bit more on how how we got to the point where we actually want to pursue adding this to AU base, which I assume is what this is all in aid of. I guess part of me is kind of wondering right now, the only identified Australian use case we have is in e-requesting. I assume there was some discussion that perhaps concerned where else it might be useful. Did that occur?
Correct. Yeah. So we didn't, we weren't sure where else it might be used, maybe in referral, I'm not sure. But we thought you might have some experience internationally with where this extension's used.
Yeah, so yeah, it's popping up here and there, and sadly, it's also disappearing in the United States at the moment. I think maybe what I'll do is, I mean, if those questions are handy, I can try and answer them here if there's time now. Otherwise, it might be better if I just go through all of them and respond to all of them at the next meeting.
Sure. I'll flick you the email because
Yeah.
if you were away, it would have just got lost in your email. So I'll flick it to you again.
Probably.
And then if you
Okay.
just want to respond to that, that'd be great.
Yeah. Okay.
Cool.
All right. Good. Okay. Next one is that
So that's the same.
same. Yep. Okay. Next one we have not triaged items, so we'll need to postpone for next meeting. Unless any of the other co-chairs know any that has been done. Our last co-chair meeting was.
I could say there's yeah, we was some things I was missing last time. The yeah, we did identify some issues that have been around for many years. So we were going so I think there's a set that we're going to get referred back to the raisers to see their position on them and whether they wanted to continue to pursue those issues. So there was a set, yeah, that were effectively marked like stale issues that probably could get considered by the work group and whether there's any interest in continuing. There was also a set of things specifically for the agency. So there will be an email going out to the agency with a set of things that were raised by the agency that haven't been looked at for some years now. So just to check relevancy and whether they're things that need to go forward from the backlog. So that's a couple of things that will happen in the near future.
Okay. Danielle and Andy.
Hasn't been done yet.
Nope. Okay. Well, that's our actions. So the next item is our A-base next version.
Yeah. So I'll talk to that one. So that document's been prepared. So there is a copy there of something. So this is our project scope statement for the next release of AU Base. So I think there is a clear assumption that there will be a balloted release in August. So this is really just scoping that. So this hasn't, I'm not proposing we vote on this today, but I'm going to send it out to the list for next time to get that reviewed for approving next time. And basically that's just a requirement for getting just for doing the next ballot cycle. And really I mean, you can open up and have a look, but it says what you probably expect, which is that it's supporting the other specifications that are going to ballot in August. And
Did you want to walk that through now, Brett?
Yeah, we might as well because that'll hopefully we'll just spend like 5 or 10 maybe. Jane, do you want to open that PDF up? Yeah, it's not startlingly exciting, which you kind of imagine. So if we scroll down to the info, yeah, cool. So basically, our mission for AU Base hasn't changed. We are, that's pretty much the same. So we're expecting things to get derived from AU Base, and it defines, approaches to using FHIR in Australia. We're expecting to go to this version as R6. We do have some breaking changes and based on decisions made from the R5, the version 5 release. So that this will be published as version 6, likely. And basically we know we have AU Core R2 and e-requesting going for R1, going to ballot at working standard level. That's the expectation. And we also are doing a draft for comment for patient summary at R1. So we'll be supporting that activity. And it's much easier to do with an open ballot than otherwise. And we also have new material that's come in as well. So that's all in consideration as well. So that's why we need to have a ballot and why we need this project. And basically, yeah, so it's really just covering off that supporting role, and also there's the times and types release. So yeah, again, working standard level. We're replacing the R5 version, and we have our dates and times there, include August ballot and reconciliation after that. And other than that, if we scroll down a bit more, the project team's kind of the same. We go down a bit, yeah. So we've got the same sort of supporting groups and project participants there. A lot of this hasn't changed from last time we did a PSS. We've got the additional patient summary implementation guide project there now. And other than that, the rest is just metadata. So there's no real difference. So yeah, hopefully, yeah, I obviously welcome any feedback on the content, but I'll officially send it out on the FHIR Work Group list today, and then we can look at approving that next time.
Okay, thanks, Brett. I noted
Yeah.
a couple of
Thank you.
Yeah, cool.
things. I think my name was spelt wrong. That's all right. I've sent you a message about it.
That'll be a typo. Thank you. Unless you want someone else to do it that's got a similar name.
You didn't misspell the unique bit. I think it's Daniel with a double L, but anyway. Doesn't matter. I've sent you a message in Teams.
Excellent. Yeah.
Oh, fabulous.
Oh, I just wanted to add, I do have some extra info there. Like there are links there to like the probably expected ballot period, and just timings around that. And there's a few checkpoints. Like we have to have a PSS, we have to do a notice of intent to ballot before the ballot process. So we can't do a notice of intent to ballot without a project. Danielle?
I'll finish that bit, and then I've got a question around this that I want to ask, please.
Yeah, cool. So yeah, so there's some dates and times there, which are, I think, the planned dates and times, and I think they're pretty firm at the moment. So we'll get a actual definite result on that soon. And probably the important thing is to note how many calls are left before we have to commit to a version. So we've really only got 5 calls after today to get things done. Cool.
Okay, so talking about that, there are 5 calls from today. There's a Spark testing event in June 24, and it might be useful, especially because that includes e-requesting. Some of the changes, if any of those are going to be used directly in e-requesting, are kind of prioritized up front so that that content can be included in a snapshot for the testing event.
Well, that's a good note.
So I think we'd ask for a snapshot from base to be around the week starting the 9th of June would be the aim. But it might be at the end of that, which is, what does that mean? Like 3 meetings?
Yep.
Before a snapshot, yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then we can bring back some of the reporting of any of the changed AU based content and if anything was that has come out of that testing.
Okay, so any action then before the next meeting to make sure that we're able to, obviously Brett's going to send this out
Yeah.
today.
Yeah, and I think we're back to the prioritization question about what things should happen first. Yeah. So I call on the EREC people. There's a few that we know are EREC related. So if you really want them at the EREC, no other things, aren't we? So we'll need to work out what's important.
Okay. No other comments? We're ready to move on. Okay, so 4, we have some open deferred board items. Do we have any update on those, Brett?
Yeah, I can report back on those ones as well. These were the one. These were the licensing and copyright content questions. I referred to the board to define policy and what's needed. We had the board had a plan to has set up a working party to look at those. We have had a meeting. We've worked out a number of outcomes from that. There are also some questions outstanding to get answers to from the agency. And I think the plan will be to finalize that stuff and get back with a position in those tickets that relate to AU base. There are a number of other tickets too relating to other specifications which are very much aligned. So I think, yeah, that's still not complete, but has progressed. So that was just to note that that has happened. And yeah, we kind of have an expectation that we'll get an answer on some of these and get a complete definition of what to do recorded. Yeah.
Okay. Any comments? Okay. Number 5 then, we have Brett again.
It's my meeting. Yeah. So these were a couple of backlog items, and I think there's probably but they were mentioned last time, but I think these are a couple I think we could probably look at now. So if you want to go into that first one, basically, this is a style question, where now, generally speaking, in our naming for artifacts, when we're referring to a resource type, we use the resource type spelling. So for organization, it's with the Z because the resource has a Z. However, the computable name is not reflecting that, for organization at least. So there was a request to just get that aligned, so that the computable name matches. So that's matching the title, I believe.
Title has an S.
Title has an S. And that's
Yeah.
correct, right?
What are you asking me? So both the title and the computable name use S, not Z, and
That should be Z.
this
Yeah.
issue from Alicia is saying, well, you're actually talking about the resource, so it should be a Z, and that would be on both pieces of metadata that would change. And noting that this isn't the only instance where the spelling of the resource is not applied. I think it's the only immunization, for example,
Immunization, yeah.
has an S instead
It's
of
the
a
same.
Z.
Yeah, and this is the AE core. It was decided to use the resource name in it, and that's done, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd be pretty happy to move this to be the resource name, like AU base organization with a Z and immunization, and the other attendant changes of related person being one word, the same way the FHIR resource is. I'd be very happy with that, but I don't know if that'd be an issue.
Won't that break downstream IGs? Like they'll have to change as well?
No, it won't. It's the canonical URL that's a reference.
Yeah.
I'm not aware of any referencing or deriving or complies with or impose that would have that would break or validation or anything like that from this, because everything resolves off the canonical URL.
And going to a breaking change version, that's probably fine anyway. I don't know if people want to think about it, but I'd go with Danielle and say we should just make this the policy approach to solve this problem. And so it has those parts which are to use the resource spelling in titles, names, and also to use the resource name in the title. So related person becomes one word. Rather than with spaces, which it has now. Ruben.
I guess my view on this is obviously we need to be consistent if we're going to make a decision. And I would also recommend documenting that decision somewhere in the preamble for the IG, which states our policy on this. I wouldn't like us to go down a pathway where we deal with this on an ad hoc basis, on a case-by-case basis. We should decide once and adopt it everywhere and state what we're doing.
Yeah, we do have some policy material which needs organizing, I gotta say, but I think, yeah, we can definitely document it.
If memory serves, Standards Australia used to have something like this, because many of you who've been through those committees will note that everything we produced there needed to be in US English because that was the policy. And they actually had some text explaining why that goes somewhere. Might be good to look at doing something like that.
Yeah, so just to name names, there's like...
Or we could just update the conventions. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which
we've
there
got
is
service request
metadata
related
conventions document.
Yeah, so we've got like service request related person, practitioner role, medication statement, medication request, medication dispense, medication administration, healthcare service. They're all the main ones I can see that would have the spaces removed from the names, and the organisation and immunisation spellings would be Americanized to match the resource. Thank you, David.
Oops,
So
I
Danielle,
missed one.
did you want to move the convention? I think that would be the best way. That way, if we miss one.
Yeah, because it is the convention
Yeah.
in base, or was one, and we've been debating about changing it and never got around to it. But I think the original argument for it was way back when FHIR first started, and nobody knew these resources, and now it's the other way around. Everyone's all like, what is this healthcare space service you speak of?
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm happy to motion to change the policy for the title and name of AU base structure definitions to where they refer to a resource, to use the resource spelling from the FHIR standards.
You second that?
Okay, great. Anyone against or abstaining? Nope. Okay. Oh, hang on. Oh, no, it's not related, Michael. Okay,
Right.
so 9-4.
It is slightly related. It's just that if we were using fish in our downstream OGs, it would break because it's using the name, not the URL. That's why I put it in there.
Oh. All right. Cool. Yeah, it's good. We can.
Okay.
I'm going to
respond this
update the
ticket
list in
also.
the chat, and I'm going to ask that this list is included in the minutes, because I just missed the medication ones.
Yeah,
Okay.
We'll
cool.
make
That'll
sure
be
it's
good.
updated. Thanks.
Easy
Thank you.
to work with. Yeah.
Okay.
Awesome. Okay.
All right.
Next one. This one was an issue raised quite some time ago. As you'll see, it's been converted from a GitHub issue a couple of years ago. So yeah, so this was one that came through as to why we have our own AU extension for time zone. So basically that, it seems to serve the same purpose, which I think is fair in the sense that it's an extension that adds a time zone, some time zone content. These are our extension and the international one are slightly different, however, not in a meaningful way, in the sense that not introducing any like functional difference. I think we're bound to codable. Let me get this right.
Can we look at
Yeah,
both
let's
of
look
them?
at it. Let me get the link up.
Do you want me to bring them up?
That'd be amazing.
No.
I'll just drop the links in the chat.
Thanks, Tim.
Oh, hang on. That's the previously published version. I'll go to the current build and find it and drop that in the chat. Okay, that's the Australian one and the international is I think this one.
How are we going to do this? You guys see that?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you scroll down on the international one, you'll see that if you go to the differential, you can see they've just got a code, but it's bound to IANA time zones, whereas we've got a codable concept. There's no, I mean, I guess you can represent a text definition only if you wanted to, but I don't think that's necessarily a problem going into the international one, because we're typically looking for a specific time zone code. The other thing is we're bound to specifically an Australian territories, states and territories time zone set. So that effectively we have we've profiled it for Australian use in Australian locations. Yeah, so which is where we're applying this, whereas the international one is completely general. Okay, so I think if we were to pick up the international extension, that would essentially, I think, remove the need for our time zone extension, the AU one, and we probably look at creating an extension profile to create the equivalent value set binding to the content. So we would have effectively an equivalent code available in the extension. Of course, this would be a breaking change for people that wanted to use the recommended international extension, because the URL for the extension changes. So I guess just any comments or discussion.
What's the maturity level of the Australian one? Is it AFMM 1? So it's published, so we'd be moving to
this call.
Deprecate it.
Yeah,
like we'd keep the same value set, because that Australian value set is a subset of IANA time zones. And we'd instead have a profile where we would say use this subset for Australian time zones.
Yeah, so there'd be a new extension profile. Applying that. Yeah, which is something we didn't have at the time when we wrote that original extension. So
and it would deprecate this, and we would unhook it from what profile is it in? Is it actually explicitly in a profile?
That is a real good question.
It doesn't mean it can't be used, it's just deprecated.
I suspect it is used.
If you scroll up, Jane, on the left, we'll see, use this extension, healthcare service and practitioner role.
Yeah, so that's like availability times in healthcare service. I'm not sure what it is in practitioner role.
Same thing. It's availability times, but associated with a particular practitioner rather than service.
Yeah, because the issue was location specific timing, because you don't know what time zone those availabilities are in if you're looking at a national thing. So yeah, it's useful.
I mean, I think this makes sense that we should be using the international rather than the Australian. But I think, that should be I guess, a Jira and a proposal, and should contact, because this original one came from PCA, so that they can come to that session where we might
Yeah.
motion that. But I think that makes sense to do that.
All right. Yeah. So I guess what we put together a specific proposal with a ticket,
Yeah.
or take that. Well, I guess we could take that ticket and say, well, I think the resolution would be to create those new artifacts and duplicate.
Yeah. The proposal, because I don't think let me just confirm, we're suggesting we deprecate, not like
Yeah.
just remove and stop publishing the
Yeah,
originally published one.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
yep,
I
cool.
think we're obliged to deprecate. Yeah. Oh, look, there's a list. I propose there's my list of things to do, which I didn't know I'd written. Deprecate, create that derives extension. Yep. At the time zone value set, binding and apply that extension, replacing the E times that extension where it's used. Yeah, which is healthcare service and practitioner role. Yep.
So are you happy to take this on, Brett?
Yeah, I'm happy to take that on. I'll so I think just maybe as an action, I think drafting a branch so that we can look at it is probably the thing.
Because I think the
If
other
people
thing
are
I'm
happy to continue
asking,
with that, yeah.
this would be normative, right? We'd be swapping out one extension for another. It's not, constraint normative, but it does impact the profile definitions. And since it's healthcare service and practitioner role, that goes in core, and it also goes into EREC, which has prac role. So I think we'd want that to be something that we have available in what gets tested at that 24th June event.
Yeah, that's good. So the action would be, I guess, I mean, it would be prepare something.
Do a branch, stick it on the
lines.
agenda.
Yep.
Yeah, and
I
guess notify PCA.
Yeah, exactly. Because I guess it's the directory. This is mainly a directory's concern, because it's really about availability kind of times. So so I think they're the ones that probably have the biggest sort of consequence impact on them. Just take that as an action on me for next meeting.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Well, here's a couple of stale issues.
Do you want to go over them now?
I guess I don't know, because it's these were ones that were raised along the way. Yeah, we can have a look, because I think the question is, like, how do we deal with these things? Danielle raised this one some time ago with an agency hat on. So it's and I think there's been little discussion or interest in going forward on it. And so it got parked as part of our kind of triaging GitHub issues. So there's basically a new profile to handle state issues, seniors cards, but I haven't got anybody with a use case that's really demanding it. So the question is, do we just retain these things forever, or do we just end up saying these are stale, there's no action happening, close it until somebody needs it and they'll raise a new ticket? They've had 5 years.
I mean, I'm happy for it to be closed. It was an exploratory thing at the time.
Yeah. Well,
that didn't eventuate. Yeah.
And I'm happy to close it too. Yeah.
So should I motion that
I think that, should we do that? We'll motion
close this ticket as we've had no requirements or projects asking for this in the last 5 years.
I will second that.
Thank you. Anybody that wishes to abstain or vote against? Nope. Okay, so we've got 10 for and motion passed. So is somebody going to close that, or should we do it now?
Yeah. Oh, we can action out other minutes. That's fine.
Yep.
I think we're 9 actually. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Sorry, I said 9,
8,
didn't
9.
I?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, cool.
Yep.
Yeah, cool.
Okay, another.
Yeah, another. This was originally this was part when we had a medications working group, which was also some time ago. This was some work particularly around specific things around medication management. And I think the issue with this one particularly is that we don't have essentially, this is looking more like a specialized project for and this is like particularly big in aged care and other sorts of things like that. So I'm not sure the FHIR Work Group is ever going to get around to doing this. We certainly don't necessarily have all of the specialized participants that we probably need to land this one.
This
Plus,
hasn't been done internationally, like it's because it is so old. It hasn't been
that I
done.
know
Does
of.
anyone know?
Not that I'm aware of. It had been raised internationally, but we can always ask. But the question I have is shouldn't this be a terminology issue rather than a structural issue?
I think it needs an extension as well. So it's so I think the thing is there's nobody progressing this and has not been progressed since 2021.
So we're talking about things like, say, for example, EpiPen, where you have the liquid medications inside the pen itself. Are we going to require a recording of the EpiPen, including the dose and the medication itself?
I think the thing is it's more to the things more dose aids like blister packing when you do pharmacy packing for aged care, like Webster pack and other sorts of ways to manage dose and administration. So it's so I think that's where it originally came from. It was how to describe when something was to be supplied as a Webster pack. So it's really a supply form. So it's not the medication itself, it's how it's packaged differently.
Are we talking about compacted medication? Are we talking about sort of factory manufactured?
Oh no, these are regular meds. So these are typically regular medications prescribed for somebody. It's very common in aged care, and they do Webster pack, which is essentially a pharmacy sets up blister packs, to put doses in specifically, so it's easy to administer. So one blister pack is one dose of the things that you need because they'll be taking multiple meds. And they'll package it.
So it's kind of those set box that include multiple medications in each compartment, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and it's so it's something that pharmacies typically do for aged care. It's a big business to do that. And it is a notable sort of supply and administration kind of field. Because it means that you're not getting things in regular packages. You're getting things in this dose pack kind of form. Yeah, so it's like, and the thing is, like, I only know that because I've done business in there before. So yeah. So I think the problem is that the know-how maybe on this stuff is not necessarily in this group, but it's something I think, and also at the moment, like, we don't have a destination for its use. I'm not sure who needs this at the moment. So I kind of think it's pretty stale in terms of activity. I mean, the material's still there if somebody wants to pick it up and specifically recommend something, but it's I don't think we need to hold it in our backlog forever.
How old is it? Oh, it's also like 5 years
But
old.
yeah, last comment 2021. Well,
Yeah,
last
I'd be
real
happy to
comment. Last
close on
real
the
comment.
same basis.
Yeah. I will second that.
Okay, I'll motion closure of that ticket, as there's been no project or interest for the last 5 years on it.
Second that.
Okay, and Brett second. So any for, against or abstain? No, Gen 9-4. Motion passed. Okay. Am I good for time? All right. So then we just have anything to discuss for next meeting? Obviously, there's been a number of actions raised.
Can we confirm? I see we don't have the things there, but there are some Jiras. There's a Jira, Michael, that I think you're bringing to next meeting as well, and I think we've got. So there's is it the Jira for the AU patient identifier?
Yeah, patient internal identifier. Yep. So that should be on agenda for next month, the 6th or 7th of May or something.
Yeah.
Do we have that available, Jane? Can you go?
I don't know that we've got one.
No, we haven't got one out.
Oops.
But yeah, if we know, we can note that.
So there's that one. Will you bring the time zone one, Brett?
Yeah, I'll bring the time zone one. I
What
also have
else?
two.
Yeah.
I have two other ones I'd like to bring as well. Just because I've got drafts for them. They were relatively straightforward ones. Let me tell you what they are. This one, which is first one there, is a healthcare service, an extra binding for languages, which was raised some time ago, but I think is pretty easy and I think a good idea. So I'll propose that one. And I got a more complicated one, which might need some more discussion, but which is to create a Australian college membership qualification value set to use for practitioner qualification. So I've got kind of draft branches for those that we can talk about. I think the first one, I think people will be happy enough with, and we'll probably get through that one. Second one, we might need some discussion and feedback, but I would like to include those ones. However, priorities, if there's other priorities that are really more pressing, those are not that important. So I'm happy for them to get bumped if they need to.
Okay. Anything else? If not, then I'm going to give 6 minutes back to everybody.
Thanks, Jane.
Use
Thank
it
you.
wisely.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thanks,
Thank
Jane.
you.
Thank you.